The University of Manitoba campuses and research spaces are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Ininiwak, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oyati, Dene, and Inuit, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. U of M recognizes that the treaties signed on these lands are a lifelong, enduring relationship, and we are dedicated to upholding their spirit and intent. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and the present. With this understanding, we commit to supporting Indigenous excellence through active reconciliation, meaningful change, and the creation of an environment where everyone can thrive. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Beyond the Prompt podcast. I'm your host, Monica Vrecher, and I'm here today with Jason Baerg, an incredible Cree-Métis curator, educator, and artist who, particularly in his creative work, pushes boundaries in digital interventions in drawing, painting, and new media installation. Often through means of visual abstractions, Baerg's projects work with various themes such as language, the Anthropocene, and Indigenous connections to land and the environment. Jason is currently teaching as an assistant professor in Indigenous practices in contemporary painting and media art at OCAT University. Welcome, Jason. I'm so happy you agreed to this.
You're welcome, Monica. It's great to be here today.
Yeah. Well, so I met you actually when you were here in Winnipeg at the exhibition concluding this year's Winter Institute at Plugin ICA. And the institute was led by Adrian Stimson, and the topic was Too Spirited for You, Unsettling Two-Spirited Indigi-Queer Art in Canada. So, I mean, I thought the topic was brilliant. A lot of the art that was created at the Institute was brilliant. But when I saw your work, I was very intrigued because it just looked, for lack of a better word, I guess it looked very holistic. Because it had like a really big visual impact, but then the smell was, I was like, it was so mysterious. I was like looking around, where is this coming from? Can you explain a little bit about this work? Like what the idea was, what was the process behind it, and how did you create this? How did you create the smell component of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it was laser cut hide. And so
right.
so what you were smelling was the laser cut hide. And what I created was two bundles. And it really signifies medicine that two-spirited people are sacred. And so yeah, there was two of them that represent me and my husband, and we really were kind of focusing in spaces of the rainbow, luminosity, and the dream. Very interested in kind of like articulating and advancing ideas around the Indigenous imaginary and Indigenous futurities. So yeah, we were kind of presenting them in cloud-like formations.
Hmm.
One was presented on a podium, and the other was suspended. So it's a work in progress. It's definitely a prototype. So we also experimented with blacklight paint or like glow in the dark paint so that it could pick up different kind of like readings depending on its light, like the way it could be lit. I'm really kind of interested in strobing the spotlights
Hmm.
so that it's like when you're experiencing the work, it's kind of responding to the light.
Hmm.
So yeah, these are the ideas in development, and that's what we presented.
Yeah. And then when we were talking, you mentioned how you did the design on the hide. You mentioned that you're using like AI, doing that a little bit.
We actually did. I did an initial drawing,
Hmm.
and then we used AI to create a vector of the drawing. So yeah, it was just a really quick way to advance the concepts.
Hmm.
And that was like a Thunderbird.
Right.
So that was a Thunderbird that the laser cut out. So yeah, that's how we animated or utilized AI.
Right. Do you do that a lot? Do you use AI a lot in your work? Kind
You
of to
know,
time or just to play with the technology or
I am so like kind of at a crossroads with AI. Like even since we've talked, I
mm,
think about like how other communities are responding to AI,
right.
especially our indigenous community here on Turtle Island. There seems to be a really big movement away from it.
Right.
I think you spoke with Kate, the kite. I think you spoke with
Yeah.
Kite. I have not watched that interaction. I'd love to watch it. One of these days I will. But recently I was in a faculty meeting and I was in discussion about curriculum development, and online was another Indigenous faculty member, and they were really strongly advocating against the use of AI.
Hmm.
And they stepped forward on behalf of the land protectors.
Right.
And so we think about the impact that AI is having on the environment. And I think like 2026 is probably going to be a huge determiner as to what the future of this will look like. I mean, in our community at least anyways. I think they're trying to find solutions to turn AI on itself to support environmental reparation. I've made a project in the same spirit,
Mm,
but it's like, can we find ways that actually ethically do not continue to um, do serious harm on the environment? And there are protocols in place that are supposed to be implemented, but are they being implemented? Is this just greenwashing? Our institutions
yeah.
really sticking to the standards and the expectations that they provided for the public. And so that's why I say, like, I don't know if the jury's really out for me as to how and where I sit with AI. I know that Indigenous people in Aotearoa or New Zealand, the Maori people are using AI, as I've been told, for language revitalization.
Hmm.
And one of the projects that we finished and presented at InterAccess could also be a platform for exactly that as well. You know, we created an installation where you would sit down and tell a story to fire,
Hmm.
and then the fire like you would be surrounded, you'd be fully immersed in media where projections of what you're speaking to are projected in the 360 degrees. So it's like that would be so amazing, um, to network with the language. We've actually identified a language speaker and an educator in Nehewin in Cree that we could work with to train our program to incorporate the traditional language of Cree. Um, but do we want to do that? There's so many people that have so many concerns about all of these things. And I'm not really the kind of person that leans into fear, but I am a person that is listening. I'm hoping we can find solutions. I don't think technology is going to disappear. And I also think that it's vitally important that Indigenous peoples are at the table and participating to make sure that further marginalization does not occur. So, it's another tool. Whether or not we as Indigenous peoples embrace it is, I feel, yet to be determined. I do believe that we need some really strong evidence that this is something safe for the environment as well as our cultures. Like ultimately, who owns content once we interact? Like apparently very few people own the content. Once you give it to AI, all copyright is handed over. So what does that mean for our traditional languages? What does that mean for customary song? There's so many things that we have to really think through. And all of that is really, really important to consider. So, what are your thoughts or feedback with regards to what I just spoke to?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think people are becoming a little skeptical to this idea that like all the problems that technology has caused are going to be fixed by technology. But at the same time, it's exactly what you said. They're going to keep moving this, right? They're going to keep developing it. So are we gonna like are marginalized communities again like gonna be just left behind and like they're like, well, we're just gonna use some other people's data then if you're not game in like participating in this. And I feel like what's gonna be more harmful actually is this gonna be more harmful that you then leave all this data, traditional data behind, because we're trying to kind of bring it back, right, and revive it, in a sense. And or if at least I feel it would be extremely useful for the culture in toto to bring it back and revive it. But I completely understand this worry that it's just going to be another form of colonizing, but in this time, not just the land, but also like the data, the language, the yeah, just the information, right?
Customary practice. Yeah. So many things. And it's like really important that everyone really reflect on their relationship not only to AI but to technology, because now everything is interfaced. Like you cannot send a Gmail without interfacing. You cannot Google search something without AI interfacing. Like it's in everything now. And it's like, where is the line? And I don't think there is one. I don't think there is one. And like it's watching, it's absorbing. They say that if you've it has everything required to replicate you just from your emails. It
Right.
understands your sense of humor.
Yeah.
It understands when you're in business mode and your professional tone. It understands your writing style, your writing voice, and it can replicate and act as you or I. You
Hmm.
know, so like I think, yeah, we really have to think about leadership and sovereignty and what it means to be at the table. And I think it's really important that we are. I don't think we can just break away and stop sending emails, because even the mailing system is kind of like eroding. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think it's probably wiser to kind of like stand in terms with holding policy in line to protect the environment
Mm.
and make sure that you know industry and the government, I mean, can we really even control these people? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like that's my worry that if we just like say, okay, I'm not using this thing. You know how I used to have a flip phone, and
so
I'm like, I'm not gonna get a smartphone because, but then gradually they just organize the environment in such a way that you just can't do anything anymore unless you use the product, right? And I think like it's kind of prudent, and that's why we also had a lot of artists come to do like a podcast with us and talk. It's usually like, artists that also
Yeah.
work with technology. They're also educators and stuff, because I think artists always are not only looking how to just, steer away from the medium, but they're always trying to subvert it and like get to know it really well, and then immediately looking for ways to subvert it. And I think if we, yeah, as kind of as educators, I think we have that responsibility to just to not say like, okay, you can't use the medium, but then of course everybody still uses it, but to kind of be like, and I don't think it's enough to say just be critical about the thing. And maybe you can give me some advice how to approach students in a classroom. you know they have to work under all these concerns, right? And they have to work with in the media environment where, you and I, we didn't grow up in the same media environment, right? So we kind of in a sense we're behind, but on the other hand we're ahead of them because we have this criticism towards it, right? When you grow up immersed in it, it's a completely different story, right? So yeah, if you have sort of like any advice, how do you approach it with your students?
Well, I know that at OCAD, it's it's imperative that they acknowledge when and how they use AI. They are required to be 100% transparent. And that is really hard too. Because, like, I see a huge difference even in a semester
Yeah.
in the presentations that students are advancing. Um, you and I know that, some of these presentations, well, I can't say I know, but it's like you get a sense that some of these presentations were made by AI, you know. Um, I think all we can do really as educators is to, hold up academic integrity
Mm.
and get them to acknowledge how and when they're using it. I do not think it's our place to advocate for or against it. Um,
Mhm.
I do think that we can offer pros and cons. Um, I think my job really is to listen, actually. I'm really listening. And I was very affected by that meeting that we had when someone I respect a lot had such hard opinions, such, grounded ideas around why we should not be using it. But I don't want to speak in circles. I think all we can do is work with our students, support them, listen to them, um, continue to educate ourselves. You know, that's the other wild thing is that, what what content is actually real anymore? Like if everything's being AI generated,
Mm.
like what can we actually trust? Yeah, so I don't want to spin into like conspiracy theories or anything like that, but I think, yeah, we have to look to our sources. We have to really try to find information that is relevant and the most up to date, and try to, yeah, just be ethical, just be as ethical as we possibly can.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, you mentioned, so talking to your students and kind of learning from them, right? And when we talked at Plugin, I think you also like mentioned that you're very big on, yeah, just like in-person communication with your students, and that you like just this idea of like, oral transmission of knowledge and oral epistemologies. I almost feel that we're gonna get so fatigued by everything being AI and everything being AI generated, and then the AI is gonna use the AI generated content. I feel like at some point it's gonna be like, yeah, we can't. It's gonna become too bad that we're going to kind of disengage from that.
Yeah.
And actually, I can kind of see it happening already a little bit for my students, to be honest. And I think students really like the turn that I kind of took, is like different from previous years when I just banned AI. But now I'm like, yeah, you can use AI, but just know that I will grade the effects of your assignments. So, the question is not going to be whether you used AI or not, but like, what's the effect of the product that you made? But then, secondly, I'm trying to really get them to do more collaborative projects, and also like collaborative projects where I'm involved. Like we did like a happening the other day, and that was just incredible. And I thought that I'm gonna get a lot of pushback from students,
Yeah.
but no, they're very into it. They love just kind of like being more like involved with one another in person. And yeah, do you like you mentioned that you do like similar stuff as well, right, with your students?
Yeah. I am just thinking about the Mouse Paradise experiment. Have you heard about that?
No. You
So,
mean the one with,
um,
yeah, the one with
I'm
the drug and the mouse, or
nope, I'm
is that
going
the other
to
different one?
put
Yeah.
this in the chat. So, yes, I do engage in this is just really in response to what you were speaking to, how, AI regurgitated content just kind of plays itself out. So, did you see the post I just I wonder.
I went to the chat, but I don't see
It's so
anything.
funny. As we've had technical difficulties all day long,
Yeah.
the mouse, the mouse paradise really was this project that was engaged between 1963 and 1968, sorry, to 73, conducted by ethnogenist John Calhoun. And he designed a rodent utopia with unlimited food, water, and shelter. And he started with 4 rats, and the population exploded to thousands of mice. But within 4 years, they went extinct.
Wow.
4 years.
Wow.
So, and that was due to overstimulation.
Wow.
And they're drawing parallels to what the media is doing to us today. And actually, they're seeing patterns in younger generations, like in their dating habits and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, all of these dating apps have provided unlimited opportunities and access to whatever it is you want. AI now is feeding us. Social media allows everyone to engage every aspect in their ego possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like I I think about my one of my friends who I went to school with, and she was so brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I won't mention her name because it's probably not ethical to mention her name, but they were like, oh my God, living their life in chat rooms in the year 2000, you know. And by the time we graduated, it was the very first graduate certificate program in new media in Canada. And that was offered by George Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had already assumed the webmaster's position at McMaster University. And within, I think, 3 years, they quit and they became a sous chef. And now they want nothing to do with technology. So I do think, like, as we were moving towards, like those interactions with our students, I think that is innate. It is kind of like babies will die if they're not touched.
Yes.
You know, we have to remember what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm.
We have to hold on to those things. And I think I think we're hardwired for that, you know. Um, are these other opportunities digitally making the situation a little more complex? Yes. Can they lead, to um, new amazing terrain? Possibly, if we use it correctly. But I do think that we also need to really consider, oh my gosh, all of it, and how
Mhm.
much we use it, and how we use it, and what is aesthetic. You know what I mean? That is one of the things. I'm preparing for an exhibition right now for Imaginative,
Mhm.
and that's through A Space. And we were in gallery yesterday talking about the install as well as production. And um, the videos that I was making, I made a prototype that used AI. It was just like completely, it utilized my ancestral images, and then we brought those ancestors to life through animation.
Oh, wow.
Um, do we want to continue to work in that manner? I'm not really sure.
Mhm.
And you know what? Dumbing down, or, like scaling back how we use the technology, will definitely have an impact. Like we
Mhm.
can get a great, effect, an outcome with the AI, but do we want to lean into that?
Mhm.
It's an aesthetic choice to actually move maybe a couple steps back and
Yeah.
work with sound and work with other approaches in animation to create something presentable.
Yeah.
The discussion itself becomes aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think like just connected to this idea of like what is aesthetic and how the aesthetic changes in, this new media environment. I think there's also like a huge question like related to this. What is pleasure? What has pleasure become, right? Because as you said, for this mouse paradise experiment, we think sometimes that we're in an environment of pleasure, but we're actually in an environment of hell. And the speaker
Yeah.
that we just had, since you mentioned the new dating habits, right? Actually, the speaker that was just speaking on Friday, also like through Zoom, she's Tega Brain. She's Australian, but she works in US right now. And one of her art projects is called Smell Dating.
Mm,
It's basically she's collecting, or not she's collecting, but she's making like or this is an old project, but she did like a network of, it's kind of like a postal network where people wear t-shirts for several days and then they pack them and like, send them to whoever is like interested in their profile or whatever, something like that. But then you like receive just the t-shirt of the person instead of like seeing their picture and like, deciding everything through that, which is so strange in the first place. Like, how can you decide whether you like someone just visually and by like, their artificial descriptions on the profile, right? Like the smell is such an important part of human experience, and you use it in your work as well, but also touch, obviously touch, and this used to be the aesthetics used to mean like all senses were involved, right? And then with everything kind of shifting more to visual, into art that you couldn't touch, right? Then it was like, oh, you look at things, right? And with just this Cartesian idea that you distantiate from things in order to control them, right? And classify them and like order them in systems. And this all goes very much against the traditional ways of understanding aesthetics and understanding basically human experience and uh worldly experience and environment and all that, right? So in a sense, I'm like, we really desperately need to bring some of these traditional knowledge back, but not just in a kind of abstract way of like, databases of knowledge, databases of information, where you can, go and read about it. It's like, no, we need to actually start implementing them more concretely. And you actually also, you refer a lot to traditional ceremonies in your work. And this is another one of those like double-edged sword, right? When I kind of think like, oh my God, non-Indigenous people, or at least like, white people, I guess. I don't know if I'm allowed to speak this way, but like we really need some of these medicines, we really need some of these treatments. We need a contact with that. But on the other hand, is also like I understand that Indigenous people are being very careful about this because they don't want us to abuse these technologies again, right?
Mhm.
You think there's a way, to kind of like start healing that kind of division, right? Between
Well,
them.
I think it's all, I think there's so much work that could be done. And I think about extraction, and I think that a- I can only speak from my own experiences, like I I propose that, if Indigenous peoples, in my own these are just my perspectives, no one else in the Indigenous community, this is just me,
Mhm.
you know, if we had clean water, if we had decent houses, if we had access to opportunities, if our voices were heard and respected, if we were not tokenized, I think the fear would subsude, And I think, like, yeah, it makes it really hard to trust.
Totally, yeah.
And it makes it really hard to look beyond circumstance to think about someone else's healing, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
when so much has been taken
Hmm.
and without care, without, reparation.
Hmm.
So, like, I would, I'm of the mindset where it's like, you know, if we're on this land and the medicines come from the land, then all who live on the land deserve those medicines. But maybe one could look at it like, well, are you honoring and respecting the land? Are you honoring and respecting these teachings? Are you ready for the medicine?
Right.
Are you actually going to, benefit from the medicine if you're in a way that just continues to exploit? So
Right.
I think about that a lot. I think that's, yeah. And I can only do my own work for myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And teachings come as I believe you're worthy. And so, even in my journey in reclamation, I am very introspective on where I'm at and what I deserve access to. And, I welcome my teachings.
Mm.
And when they come, they will come. But yeah, I do agree with you. I do agree with you that, I think there's a lot of settlers who are hungry.
Mm.
Their spirits are hungry because they are not living in communion with the land and each other. And it's about those balances and finding that harmony. And yes, of course, their spirits would feel so much better and things would resonate very differently, if we were at peace with these things. So
Yeah, definitely. And it's not even just I guess indigenous traditions that could help here. Like
yeah,
so I'm originally from Slovenia, and
yeah,
we had a lot of like very rich folklore,
yeah,
right, that we like traditionally, and like there was a lot of dancing, a lot of
yeah,
singing, like
yeah.
even just stuff like that. I feel like we need to kind of come back to our bodies a bit, and once we do that, we will handle the technology also way better once we know how that feels, how the community feels, how being connected to something spiritual feels. But it feels like we're kind of we lost it somewhere, and now it's like, oh my God, we're really at this precipice when
I think it's capitalism.
Oh
I
yeah, I mean,
capitalism. It's extraction. It's just like exploitation, you know,
yeah.
it's like so many things that are tied to capitalism. Yeah, you were speaking about Slovenia, and I recognize and acknowledge your traditional people and those customary custodians. You know, like there are what we call indigenous. You have indigenous over in your part of the world. You know, so in every place there are people that have those deep connections to place and time and customs. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And yeah, speaking of that, because Slovenia has also been like occupied throughout history, because it was like under Austro-Hungarian, and like we're my region especially like very close to Austria, so we were always had like these Austrian lords, like coming and like also kind of like it was a form of occupation as well, but as a consequence to that, actually Slovenian language, because at certain points in history and even like during Second World War and so on, we weren't allowed to speak Slovenian, in schools as well. I mean, it wasn't nearly as bad as residential schools, but like it had this kind of also, our
Cultural
culture
expression.
was
Yeah.
suppressed, right?
Yeah.
And as a consequence to that, there was like a huge underground, yeah, just like literary like current that is still present today, actually. And like underground poetry scene is very strong today, because like throughout, like historically, it kind of, the whole idea is that poetry and language used in a certain way, first of all, is used in a way that is that goes against the authority of whoever is in charge, and it goes against the rules, and that is basically a tool for freedom, right? How is that considered in, and I know, like, there's like lots of different indigenous nations, there's lots of different languages, but I feel like the consequences here were like very dire for languages. And I don't know, like, to what extent are you working, with any like organizations that are like trying to revive the languages, or like how is this working differently here than what I just like explained?
Well, I think most of, well, yeah, I think I am very interested in being surrounded by people that are advocating for affirmative change and like for supporting those movements that um make room for our culture in various aspects and ways. Like we mentioned that I was engaged with Tutu Spirited for You. So we think about our traditional role and place in community and what that means for the collective.
Mm,
I and we are medicine. Two spirited people have traditional roles that vary from nation to nation, and so we think about like reclamating the knowledges through community consultations and then making art to celebrate that as well as to serve as educational proponents to help heal our people as well as challenge challenge heteropatriarchy and binaries and these things that are completely grounded in capitalism and their pursuits. So like I think that's just one aspect. Like when we think about language revitalization, when we think about like the land and the water protectors, like those are all things. I mean, land and water protectors, they're really responding due to the kind of environmental crisis that we're facing.
yeah.
But really, what are they practicing? They're practicing ancient ceremonies that foster the relationship between water and the land. They're just really just animating and activating these ancient relationships that we've had. So, it's like that's where I believe art within Indigenous paradigms are of interest to myself. And those are the kind of artists that I like to surround myself by. So, yeah.
This term came up a few times when I was researching you and your art, Indigenous futurisms. Um, how do you explain this term? Because obviously, I mean, I understand. Well, maybe like you should just like take over and kind of say
The
something.
first time I ever presented Indigenous futurist work was actually before the term was grounded.
Hmm.
And I presented at Urban Shaman in 2009. And ooh, who was that person? I'm looking really quickly. Who was that person who defined? I'm failing to remember their name right now. Right now, Indigenous futurities. I know her daughter very well too.
Hmm.
Grace Dillon, Dr. Grace Dillon. She's Anishinaabe, and her daughter. So Grace Dillon, and I believe the term kind of came forward around 2011.
Hmm.
So I presented work at Elizabeth LaPensée. So I presented work at Urban Shaman in 2009, and really it was this it was actually much more sobering than the work I currently do. And it was like you were up in sky world, you were above the earth, and we were remembering we were remembering painting.
Hmm.
It was in the, the not so far future, and we were looking at digital art.
Right.
And when there was this like robotic turtle that hovered above this umbilical cord that took you up into sky world, and then there was there you can actually find it. It's still online. It's called The Plain Truth. And the plain truth really, and then when you go to the north, you'd see a white composition. When you'd go to the east, you would see a yellow composition, and all of these things really did engage conversations about curatorial approaches
Hmm.
through Indigenous cosmologies, but it was also remembering what could now be called traditional art form, which is drawing and painting.
Right. Yeah.
So I was responding to the moment where Canada was welcoming its very first PhDs in the visual arts, and to apply, you needed to have a digital aspect in your production.
Okay.
So that was through Western University. And I thought, well, wow, wasn't that crazy? I mean, I'm not afraid of that because there's digital component to my art practice. But
Mhm.
like, what about there's like incredible things yet to be said through drawing and painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, so that it was kind of a little bit more graver than I now work in when I think about Indigenous futurities. I tend to now kind of like envision continuum beyond crisis.
Hmm.
I was also really responding to very powerful voices in contemporary Indigenous art, like Rebecca Belmore, who just like has done a phenomenal job bringing attention to the atrocities against our people.
Hmm.
Very powerful, very guttural, very sobering work. I I think I have my own trauma responses, and I don't want to trigger our people anymore.
Hmm.
Like it's really hard to go to some film festivals and like all you see is this regurgitation of our pain.
Yeah.
So, and suicide is high in our community. Suicide is high. Like, I think about the mental health of our people. And so that's where I really use Indigenous futurisms to kind of like breathe hope and welcome, aspiration and call in the dream. That was one of the kind of prompts last year in my studio was like the fantasy is free.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like really center everything in love and joy because I've lost people to suicide myself, and I'm just, like I'm trying to create pathways. I'm trying to create pathways and also encourage like creative articulation and growth and all of these things. Innovation, I'm really excited by. I want to see new things. I want to welcome new experiences for our audiences. So, yeah, when I think about Indigenous futurities, it's really kind of, for me, it's about championing the future and really envisioning a place where we as Indigenous peoples not only just feel safe, we also feel seen and included and honored, and just engaging. So yeah, that's how I kind of like work in spaces of Indigenous futurities.
Yeah, and I suppose I was thinking about this in terms of, institutions and art institutions. I just teach contemporary art history course now, and throughout, especially like 60s and 70s, there was a lot of skepticism against art institutions. A lot of art created that directly went against kind of also exploratory, policies and commodification of art and all that. How how do you think contemporary art institutions like are they doing like a decent job in this effort to uh for reconciliation and
Oh,
or like
you
because
know
I
what? I think it's
yeah
about community too. It isn't just about
yeah
the institution because, I've seen institution give people jobs, and then I've seen our people get inside and use that and weaponize that against certain people. And I've seen them extract from other artists to support the advancement of other artists. Like I've seen it. That's like classic lateral violence. So it isn't just about the institution, it's about a collective healing.
yeah and collective responsibility, right?
Yes.
Everybody has to.
Gatekeeping too is another weapon that people with PhDs think they're entitled to,
Hmm.
but they forget that we all can learn something from a 2-year old as well as from an 80-year-old. And not neither one of them are more important than the other. We need the elder, we need the infant, and we need to respect and honor that everybody plays a vital role in the circle. And I was so grateful to sit on a jury at the Canada Council for institutions and
Hmm.
their core funds. And the great institutions that were making massive contributions were those that were telling both sides of the story.
Yeah.
They weren't just giving opportunities to one gatekeeper's agenda.
Hmm.
They're providing that opportunity for perspective and voice to occur from two sides of the same coin. You
Yeah.
know, you're going to say A and that other artist is going to say Z, and they're both worth considering. So like, yeah, I think I think there's some ancient wisdoms that will always apply. Like I just noted, like the infant and the elder, like there's things that we need to kind of like remind ourselves of. Like why does that person with the PhD have the power? Do they really have the power? They think they have the power and they act in ways, but in actuality, I believe, yin and yang will always exist.
Hmm.
And I think wisdom is through humbling, and we have to be listening and responding, listening and responding, listening and responding, and changing our course as required. So, yeah, those are
Yeah.
my thoughts
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
like institution and community.
Yes, absolutely. This because I feel especially in this age of, social media and everybody's really quick to like respond to things, but this responding, right, is kind of connected even if etymologically to responsibility because there's this media theorist who I did a PhD on him, that's why I know him, but he's quite unknown here, Willem Flusser. But
Mm,
he said responsibility is responsibility. It's the ability to
I
respond.
love that.
Yeah, but it's also like the ability to respond in a way that's, responsible. Like it's kind of like a full circle, right? So that
Yeah.
when you're saying when you're like acting out of just your own benefits but not thinking of other people, that's like you're responsible for that. Like and I mean he was also Jewish, so his family was killed in the Holocaust and stuff, and so
Mm,
he used Hannah Arendt's work a lot, and this her idea that basically, a lot of Nazis were like, well, we just obeyed the orders, and this idea, I feel like now with like social media, we're like, um, the responses are so mindless, and it's you can that's why everything is so polarized because everybody is like kind of like there's like two ruts, and then like as soon as you go to respond, it will throw you in one of the poles, right? If you don't have kind of grace to understand why someone else is doing and what they're doing. And I mean, it's a very complicated issue because, of course, when someone's harming you, you just want to say, okay, they're wrong and they need to go away. But on the other
are
hand,
they really harming you? Has one stopped to actually engage and ask some questions from them directly?
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's where communication can really ground change.
yeah, definitely, yeah, I agree.
Perception is so wild, but it's not reality. Perceptions are not reality.
It's interesting because we actually had this artist also have a talk here called he's Trevor Paglen, but he talked about brainwashing and how just like all these, he's basically working with secret services or like not working with, but like he's exposing the infrastructure, especially in USA. Surveillance infrastructure and how basically like media propaganda and so on, and he was like talking about how yeah, basically like how brainwashing works and like some of the operations that the psyops. And I was just thinking, yeah, even just this, just the normal way in which media functions when it's always trying to put us in a negative mindset, even that's a psyop, like you just start to look in the world at the world in a certain way, and you start to just feel defeated, even if say everything in your immediate reality is okay, and not that everybody, not that we can all find problems, but I feel like the more you're in this mindset of like, oh, this is bad and this is bad and this is bad, the less you're really able to connect with what's really directly around you, with your family, with your friends, with your, what do they need, right? Okay, sure, we can think about these wars that are like on the other side of the world all the time, but what does my neighbor need, what does my student need, what does my colleague need, so
Yes.
we're kind of like being again like, and of course,
Psyop.
yeah, and this serves capitalism enormously, right? Because it just
Yes.
keeps us
Yeah. Numb.
numb. Yeah,
Unable to actually respond to direct needs. And I really appreciate what you spoke to. Like I think what is happening around the world has everything to do with economics
yeah,
and capitalism. Um, and I do take great offense when someone knocks on my door and asks me for a donation for something that's going to impact a nation around the world, when a lot of our First Nations communities are having serious problems with housing and serious problems with water, clean water. Like access to education for our Indigenous peoples as well is also, like there's so much to do at home. There's so much to do at home. There's so much to do for our neighbors. And I think, yeah, it's like technology is really an interesting thing, but yeah, I think connecting to real people and like sharing our skill sets and connecting in real ways is I think going to become more and more attractive. Just like the handmade thing is going to become more and more expensive. The
Hmm.
one of a kind is just going to be that much more precious. So
Absolutely, yeah.
we have to we have to hold
Wrap
on to
up.
art. We have to hold
Oh,
on.
sorry.
We
I
have
was
to
like, I thought you looked at the time and you were like,
no. I was
um,
just saying we have to hold on to art and we have to hold on
absolutely.
to art education and we have to hold on to like class sizes that allow us to engage as much as we can one on one with our students. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and I think so. Just the last question, and then I'll let you go. I know you're
Yeah.
a very busy person, but I was actually talking to my partner the other day, and there's this like idea of like, okay, well now AI will be so good very soon that it's going to be able to replace everything, right? And I said, well, you know what? It's actually going to happen like to people that like okay if it's going to create a huge segment of population that have no skills, suddenly people that have skills will become so much more valuable. And I'm sure it's going to take maybe a generation or two for people to catch on to that, but they eventually will, and there's going to be a revival of this. Maybe we had to go this full circle in order to come back to okay appreciating manual work,
Yeah.
appreciate. And yeah, I don't know.
What healing means, and like actually too, we have to like really train ourselves not to just be brainwashed against truth, like um and what really does heal, and I think about like have you ever heard of luxury communism?
I don't know. Well, I think
Luxury
I kind of what it means, but
communism,
yeah, tell me.
I give you a quick summary. Luxury communism proposes, and this was a theory that evolved. I think it like kind of emerged, at least in my consciousness, around 2015 when I went to grad school.
Okay.
And luxury communism proposes in the not so far future, animation will replace the majority of the workforce, and that people will be given a living wage, but they will always need a middle class because the middle class will test innovation for those that have access to everything. So there will always be a strata of kind of like resource distribution,
Mm,
but they've started to kind of like already test this out. Like during COVID, a lot of us were on like these subsidies so that we could continue to live.
mm,
You know, yeah, I think you're right. I think like there will be a testing period. They will have to learn from what will work, whether or not community buys into the directions they're leading us down, whether we have options to whether or not we want to participate is yet to be seen. So, but we got to hope for the best
mm.
and
Yeah, as you said,
do our
positive
best.
experiences, focusing on joy. Like let's not get defeated with all of this, even though
Oh,
it's like the David and the Goliath. I don't know if this is the correct way to
yeah,
pronounce it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We just have to remain kind of vigilant, and we have to remain like uh what's the word, like kind of kind of cheeky and like clever and look for the cracks, right? Because every system, and Tega Brain also mentioned that when she's looking at surveillance infrastructures as well, and she said that actually one thing that her and her students realized is how this data collection and the surveillance through data is actually very patchy. So when you know how it works, you're definitely able to like sight through the cracks, right? So yeah, so in art, exactly. And this is why I think it's so important that artists engage with these new technologies the way that you do. Because like we can just learn so much more from kind of this really creative, subversive approach to it.
Amazing stuff. that's how
That's
we'll proceed.
Jason, thank you so much for taking the time. I love this conversation. Very thrilled to have you.
Well, thank you so much. It's really been an honor to be here today. So, all the best to you and your students. I am like, yeah, I'm looking at the time. Yeah, it's been really awesome to speak with you today, Monica. And I'm sure we'll see you again and again and again and again.
Guest on this episode of Beyond the Prompt was Jason Baerg. Host was Monica Vrecher. Recording was produced by University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts Media Lab. Editing was done by Ekamjit Singh and Monica Vrecher. This podcast is sponsored by Strategic Initiative Support Fund and University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts.